Hey, 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 friends. Welcome back to Thriving Thoughts. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri. Trusting and triggered. Those are the two words that stuck with me today for my conversation with my new friend, Kelly Breaux, who suffered some serious, devastating grief experiences, having lost 2 living children and 1 unborn child. I'm floored by Kelly's resilience, by her perseverance, by her desire to trust. And what I really love is her personal, intimate story of finding her own story in the story of Jesus. So I invite you to listen to her heart today. And I think this is particularly relevant. She lost one of her children to the H1N1 virus. And that's relevant right now, right, y'all? I mean, Kelly's one of her worst fears was imagined with losing her daughter to a disease that was transmitted easily. And we're in that situation again. So I think this is really relevant. I'm so grateful to Kelly for sharing her heart and just inviting you into her pain, inviting you not just into her pain, but into her resurrection story. So would you lean in and listen closely and be encouraged and inspired? And hey, share this episode with a friend that might be going through some grieving right now. Here's my friend, Kelly Breaux of Red Bird Ministries. What do you want to start with? Where'd you get that chair? That's what I want.
Well, the girl that helped me design my house, I purchased it from her. Shout out to my friend Chrissy Green with El Design and Decor.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's lovely. It is. It's like, it fits right in with like the culture of where you are. And I got to tell you, by the way, I love your accent. I know you're going to say you don't have one, but you do. Right. And we all do.
You have one too.
I know. And that's great. That's what I love is because, we get so wrapped up in our own little worlds, but I spent a year in Baton Rouge, doing my pre-doctoral internship at Louisiana State University. Go Tigers.
Yes.
When they actually won the last championship, I was there in 2007, 2008.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was super cool because the marching band, like practiced their field was like right outside of the student health center. Mm-hmm. And so when they would practice, oh my gosh, I'd be in my office, like just getting amped. Like it was really cool. Yeah.
There's no tailgating like LSU tailgating.
There is not.
Yeah. If anyone's
tailgating,
you have to go to Death Valley. It's the best.
It's incredible. The energy. I mean, it is a culture shock for me. But anyway, it really was. But yeah, several that was one of the fondest years of my life spending there. I think you people down there are terrific. And this is I think you're like the second person that I've run into lately that has this common history, but yours is present, of Louisiana. So glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us what you're doing today in this quarantine world.
Oh, I'm a homeschooling mom today.
Yeah. How many kids do you have, Kelly?
Well, we have 1 on earth and we have 3 in heaven.
Okay.
So I not by choice. I also suffer from secondary infertility. So it's been 9 years since I've been able to get pregnant. So,
goodness.
Yes.
So wait. I just want to back you up for a second because I don't know, and I'm sure our listeners don't know, Kelly, what is secondary infertility?
So what happens is sometimes when women get pregnant, and they have a baby and then they can't get pregnant again. So we call it like secondary infertility. That might not even be a technical term, but that's what I call it.
Okay. All right.
I think it is, but I haven't gone and looked that up. But I know for me, we had issues getting pregnant we delivered a set of twins in 2005. So that's part of my story. Mm-hmm. I had trouble getting pregnant for them. So it took us almost 4 years to get pregnant for the twins. And we did do fertility shots to be able to get pregnant for them.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So, and then since, let's see, I had my miscarriage in 2012, and I haven't been able to get pregnant again. So,
okay. And so are you continuing to try?
Well, yeah, every day.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it took a little while, and I'll tell you my story and why, but it took us a little while to be open to life again. And I say open, like unafraid that if I get pregnant that I would lose again, because that was my story. In 2005, when we delivered Emma and Talon, my placenta abrupted. I was only 28 weeks pregnant at the time, and they had to take them both. Thankfully, by the grace of God, that I was actually at the hospital. And it didn't dawn on me till much later, the fact that I could have died too, because, you know, I was bleeding and I didn't know.
Yeah.
Let's see how that journey began. So I delivered the twins.
At 28 weeks.
At 28 weeks, yes. And I didn't, like I said, I just kind of didn't know what was going on. I never had a child before. This was my first pregnancy. I kind of just like entered this delivery thinking what I was going through, not with this placental abruption. That was scary, but the way that I was recovering after, feeling that it was, I guess, the normal way that childbirth was. Like I had nothing to compare it to. I was very.
Did you know, like, though, it like emotionally, mentally, like in your gut, did you have that intuitive sense that something was not right?
I was very tired and like just, like my memory, like I could not concentrate. Like just, I couldn't remember what people were telling me at the time. I was in the hospital for about 5 days. So in and out of that consciousness, I think it would really what it was. But it probably had to do a lot to do with the blood loss that I was experiencing. But I couldn't remember like what the nurse or the doctor would tell me. And I remember like when Ron and I were, we were writing our story, and I was writing my book and trying to go back and to remember all of these memories. I lost them. I don't have them. But during this time that we were in the hospital, there was a lot of things that happened, transpired rather quickly. The next morning, the doctor walked into our room, the neonatologist, and told us that Talon, our son, had all the markers for a congenital defect, and they were almost certain that it was Down syndrome. At 25 years old, the odds of having a baby with Down syndrome are very, very rare.
Yeah, for sure.
We did not have any abnormalities or genetic disorders on either one of Ron and I's sides. So we answered all the questions. They still weren't, certain that that was his diagnosis, but later we found out that it was. And this was kind of surprising to us because at 17 weeks, we did actually have a doctor that told us that one of the babies had had markers for a genetic disorder, and they wanted to do further testing. But with further testing comes complications. So we had opted out of that.
Yep.
But I was pregnant for a boy and I was pregnant for a girl. So there was no way of mistaking the babies in a diagnosis like this. They had actually told us that it was Emma that had the markers and Talon was fine. So they were really trying to determine if Emma had the genetic disorder. So the next morning when the doctor comes in my room, first I had suspected that he would be coming to tell me something about Emma. So when he told me it was Talon, I really didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to process that information. Because
you had kind of already prepared for a different outcome, or a different response. Yeah.
Yeah. And the doctor, our high risk doctor, he actually told me that I think that in 20 years he's never misdiagnosed a baby in utero. The opposite, that's never happened to him. Where one baby had markers and one baby didn't. And it was actually the baby that didn't have the markers that had the genetic disorder, and the baby that did was born perfectly healthy. So this was all news to me. Like I said, first pregnancy, don't know what to expect. Everyone's just throwing all this information out at once. Trying to process, really grieving the loss of my son before he actually passed away, because of a life that I had envisioned for my son,
Now, when you say that as a mom, the life you had envisioned for your son, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, with any type of genetic disorder, you just don't know what to expect. You don't know where the limitations are going to be. There's going to be some, but you don't know, what it is. And so it wasn't necessarily that I didn't think that I could love the baby, that I could love Talon. It was just, I was just so afraid.
Yeah.
And not knowing was so scary. Very type A personality. So planning out my life is,
I find it really fascinating. How when we are not wired a certain way, we're presented with opportunities to handle things that require or would seemingly require to be wired a different way.
Yes.
Like to the complex and serious is what we're talking about, but to the simple of, I just don't have patience on the road. So why do I run into traffic all the time? Right.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Well, it's moments to grow. God always gives us opportunities to become holier.
Yes. You got that right.
So during this time, just like there was just a lot of uncertainty, and I was very scared. And I tell everybody this, like looking back at that, because I'm looking at my life as a 40-year-old, but I was only 25 at the time. I was still a child, in my eyes of what I know now to what I was going through.
Sure. Yeah.
I just have so many more life experiences, but at the time, my faith really was surface level. Although I knew who God was, I was more, I would say, at a level that I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I wanted to make my plans and like, God, you do this. Right. And it was very naive, and I know that now, but it caused, I think, more heartache for me and more layers that I'm having to unpack, in my journey.
Yeah.
But going back to the story with Talon, so I don't get y'all totally confused about what happened. Yeah. So on day 10, we actually got a confirmed diagnosis that he did have trisomy 21. And, so with that confirmation, we started to plan what this was going to look like, but it was very short-lived, the plan, because on day 13, we found out he had an infection, and on day 15, I entered the NICU, and the nurse asked me to call Ryan, and we were told that he would not make the night. During this period, I think I arrived at the NICU around 10 or 11 a.m. I'm still very foggy with my memory, but around 10 p.m. that night is when he died. So for about 12 hours, having to watch him die in front of our eyes was just one of the most darkest 12 hours of my life.
Yeah. Were you able to touch him?
We could touch him. We could hold his hand. We couldn't hold him until after he passed. It was very, very hard just to sit there and be powerless.
Completely powerless. Yeah.
And, where we had depended so much on the nurses and the doctors to care for him, and to, we just had confidence that in their ability, and to just kind of watch that all fade away. And no one could help. And it was the first time in my life that day that I really had a chasm in my faith, where I was telling you that my faith was very surface level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I kind of thought of God as like, I would say like a fictional character. Like, you rub the lamp and the genie comes out, like, and he grants your wish, or like
the man upstairs, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I know that my view now of God was very jaded. Like, I didn't know God for who he was. I just, I think, my family was, they did the best that they could, but they also were uneducated with, with the love of the Father. And I brought that into my marriage also.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just really, it wasn't that I didn't believe in God. And I tell this for everyone because that wasn't the issue. I always believed that God existed, but I was mad at him. Like, why didn't you save my son like you saved Jairus' daughter? Well, why was I not worthy to get this miracle? Like, why wasn't I worthy to receive this mercy? And it just really, it began my journey of just anger towards him.
Well, let me ask you something. If I could, Kelly, I'd love for you to dive into that a little bit deeper, because there are a number of women who I know listen to this podcast that I've heard from that are angry, that are, not were, that are, right? Angry with God. And I think one of the things that I've seen is how that I loved what you said, shared some of those thoughts, because I think that's going to resonate with some of the women listening, that when you said, am I not worthy of this blessing, or am I not deserving of this? Why did this happen to me? What's wrong with me? What does that say about me? Can you dive into that a little bit and how that connects with, like, how that ends up living outside of you too?
Okay. Yeah. So, I would have to say that because I didn't understand God's love for me, I was not able to see it in my suffering. It was so easy to just, like, when you're cruising through life, to never ever question God's love for you. But when that happened, it was the only question that I had. I felt so much guilt. Like, what did I do wrong? I felt so much shame. Because because, like, as Christians, because, we are supposed to not to be afraid. And I say this lightly because we are human, but because we know the resurrection story, we want to box that up and put it at the top of a shelf and cruise to Easter Sunday. But right. It's true. But it's not like Jesus shows us. He shows us how to love. He shows us also how to die
and suffer
and to not be afraid of that. But I didn't understand it, and I didn't know what that meant for me. And so all I saw the cross as was the crucifixion. Yeah. I never saw the cross as love. Yeah. I never saw that. And
so you saw the crucifixion as punishment?
Yeah, I did. And I felt that was my crucifixion. And I often share this with my families. Whenever a woman goes to have a C-section, they lay you in the cruciform. So on the table, and they strap down your arms. And looking back at that day, I felt like I was on the cross, and I was trying to take myself off the cross. And I think we try to do that a lot. We try to remove ourselves off the cross. But it wasn't until I learned how to embrace the cross and embrace Jesus' suffering as well, that I was finally able to see the cross as not the crucifixion, but as the way that God redeemed suffering. And he redeemed it because he loved us. And so
So let me ask you a couple of questions because, and these are just questions, not that I want an official expert answer to, or that the listeners would want an official expert answer to, but I think just for the sake of having conversation, I think one of the reasons that I have conversations with women like you on this podcast is to talk about things that a lot of us don't talk about, right? So I just, two things come to mind that I want to ask you for the sake of discussion and not to derail you from your story, but I think they're relevant to your story. So if a lot of people say, why is there suffering in the world? Like if Jesus suffered, if Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, if he took our suffering, why are we still suffering? And you may have had that question for yourself at one point. So I wonder if you can just share what your perspective is on that.
Yeah. So Jesus came not to eliminate suffering. He came to transform it. He came to redeem it. And I just, for me, understanding what that meant, and embracing that, like, this is not a punishment. Like, God is not punishing us. But he will allow good to come out of it. And it's for God's glory. It's for Christ's glory. It's not a punishment.
Yeah.
But I thought that for a long time. I did.
What caused you to make that shift from, because I think that's where a lot of people are when bad things happen. Like, what did I do wrong? Like, this is punishment. I'm paying my dues because I wasn't good enough, or I didn't love God enough, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I am very stubborn and very prideful. So basically it just was just a series of events that brought me really to my knees. Like I felt like the carpet had pulled out from me. We lost Talon a little bit later. Emma contracted the H1N1 in 2009 when that
oh my goodness
ran through the United States. She was almost 4 years old. She was 1 month shy of her 4th birthday, and she passed away. And then I miscarried in 2012, and then I lost my mother in 2015. So really, just as I was, I think, on the verge of a revelation, another suffering would come. But that is my mom's death. Really, it was just just felt like the icing on the cake. Like I just had been through so much, and I just couldn't bear it all.
Like, how much can one person take?
Yeah. And that year, 2015, is when my mom passed away. And I just really was in a dark place. I had gotten back out in society after Talon and Emma had passed. But I wasn't thriving. I was I was swimming in the deep end. I was just paddling my way, doggy paddling, to try to stay above water.
Suffering.
Suffering. And April 25th of 2016, my good friend Misty and her daughter Isley were hit head on. A drunk driver hit them, and my friend's 10-year-old daughter was killed. And I went to Misty with the assumption that I was going to walk with her through her grief journey, because I had done it multiple times.
Right. At this point, I mean, not to to make light of it, but you're a pro at this point.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like, I know how to do a funeral.
Right.
And I went with this idea, and it was a misconception really, but that I was going to journey with Misty. And what I quickly found was that she was not grieving the same way as I was. I was emotional. I could, if not many people could see the ugly, because I could hide it pretty well, but ask my husband what he saw, whenever I was in the comfort.
What would have we seen if we saw it? Because I think that there is a lot of judgment. There's a lot of lies around, how you're supposed to grieve, what that's supposed to look like. If you're doing it this way, then you must be doing it wrong, and that's not healthy for you. And there's just so much judgment behind it. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt the eyes looking at me, so I would hide my pain. And at night when I would get in the bathtub, because you can ugly cry in there and quickly wash off the makeup and no one knows what happened, and go lay in bed with your husband and, just unload.
The old shower cry trick. Oh yeah. Nobody knows.
Yeah, nobody knows. And so so many people understood me because I was hiding everything.
Well, and not only misunderstanding you, Kelly, but how, here's the truth that I want to highlight is that if we are hiding our grieving, if we're hiding our suffering, then there's no way that we can expect people to know how to help us through that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've told people I'm okay when they were calling to check on me, because certain people who really knew me well could pick up there was something going on. And,
right.
No matter what Ron and I were arguing about, it never really was about what we were arguing about. It was always about this grief that neither one of us wanted to face.
Yeah.
And it really caused a wedge in our marriage, because Ryan was not emoting his grief the same way as I was. And so then I felt shamed by him, because he, was able to go back to work. He was able to play with Estelle, and I was a mess. I couldn't do anything.
It's interesting that you label it that way, that he was able. Like, to me, the truth of that is he chose to, right? And you chose to respond the way that you chose to respond. And there's no judgment in either of those. But I think recognizing that, I think it's important to not judge the way you're responding to grief or the way that somebody else is responding to grief.
Well, I judged it all. I did. I did it all wrong. And I say that because I just want to help people to just understand what ways that could help them.
Yeah.
But I did. I chose the toxic path. And it almost destroyed my marriage, not to the point where Ron and I were ever talking about divorce, but it was just it was not a peaceful situation. Yeah. It was, I don't think either one of us was truly happy, but we never stopped loving each other. And so that was the glue that was holding us together, is that we truly loved each other, but we did not know how to grieve together.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, the key to everything was understanding what happened to us. And, I tell you, my friend Misty, for the first time, when she asked me to come back to my faith, I didn't feel judged, because she was asking as a mother of loss, and not as just someone trying to put a Band-Aid on me.
Yeah,
and
somebody that you felt like you could truly connect with and resonate with. Yeah.
Yeah, and she asked me if I would consider to make my Crucio. And so Crucio is basically like a 3-day walk with the Holy Spirit. And she had went right after Isley. I thought she was going to be angry and all this, and she didn't. To me, Misty imitated the Blessed Mother that stood at the foot of the cross and never left Jesus' side. And here I was running away, and I could not embrace the cross. And she taught me how to stay, and to never forget what Jesus did for us. And I accepted Misty's invitation, not immediately, because remember, I'm hard-headed and stubborn. I gave her an excuse first. She said, no, I told her, we're Catholic. And so I told her, I was like, I didn't make my confirmation. And she's like, well, you can make Crucio and not make your confirmation. I was like, no, but I'm pretty sure that I need to do that first.
Yeah.
And so I had another friend, her name was Shandy, and she had made Crucio and had not made her confirmation, who sold me out and told me exactly what Missy had said. She was like, you can make your Crucio. She said, but if you are serious about making your confirmation, I'll do it with you. So it wasn't telling me what to do, because that to me is still trying to fix me. She said, let's do this together.
Nice.
And that was different, because everyone else had told me what I could do to fix myself, but they were never willing to go into that trench and to help me climb out of it. Really.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Kelly, about something that you said when you said, my husband and I hadn't learned how to grieve together. So my question is, I think of that an all too common reason that we stuff down our grief or don't grieve or don't walk through that process is because we don't have somebody to walk through that process with us. And, you had Missy years later, but how, what was the process? What did that look like for you and your husband to learn how to grieve together?
So it really just came like organically through conversation. So after Crucio, at Crucio, I met the real person of Jesus Christ, and he healed my heart. And I felt like I was on the road to Emmaus, and he just illuminated my mind and opened it to scripture. Like, whereas before I was closed off. Yeah. And I was unable to see. And Ron and I, like I said, we were surviving, but not thriving. But after that experience, after I went to Crucio, he went and he met the person of Jesus Christ. And we sat on our patio one day and we actually talked about what happened. And for 3 hours, we sat and cried, and he actually cried and talked about it, which had never been willing to talk about it before. Yeah. And we just assumed so many things about what the other person was thinking.
Yes.
And just never asked.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm picturing you guys. I don't even know what your husband looks like. So he's just a figure at this point, but I'm picturing you guys sitting on this patio, and to me, that's the picture of redemption from suffering.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just that you guys individually were made whole, were redeemed individually, but together.
Yes.
Your love for each other, your marriage, your union was redeemed in those moments.
Yes. We had no idea when we said I do, what was going to come, Our idea of our vows, they were not what happened. Yeah. And that was understanding, what marriage really is and the covenant, and, how 3 really is to get married. You have to have, you have to have God at the top. Right. We're both centered on Christ. The closer you get to Christ, the closer you are to each other. Right. And, he really, he healed our marriage as well, because for so long it was, I wasn't just mad at God. I was mad at the world. I was mad at everybody. Anybody who, had something that I wanted or that I had lost, that, it was just toxic, really. Yeah. And understand. Oh, I'm sorry. Go.
No. I want to ask you a question. I mean, particularly relevant to this time, and thinking about, how we are traumatized by our grief experiences. And that, you never get over anything, right? Like, grieving is a lifelong process. It changes, it morphs, right? But we don't ever forget. We don't ever, sometimes when we least expect it, memories and things come up that make that like fresh wave of, grief come over us. So I wonder, has this time with the the coronavirus, has that brought up anything from the situation with Emma and H1N1?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially at the beginning where all they did was try to compare the H1N1
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
it really, I had to really stop watching all the headlines and be adamant about, sitting with scripture and, going to the promises of God, because even though I feel that like I'm so far in my faith, I'm human and my heart is still wounded.
That's right. Yeah.
I still miss my children. Like I still want another child. So to say like, once you are healed, like these triggers stop coming,
right.
like that is untrue.
That's a lie. Yep.
Yeah. And I've really learned how to pay attention to how I react to things, because when I react negatively, I know that wound is still tender, and I know that God still needs to do some healing.
Do some work there. Okay.
Do some work. So I've been very adamant about paying close attention and bringing that to prayer.
Okay.
And that has helped tremendously.
Yeah. To just be really in touch with what's going on and being able to then remedy that by saying, okay, God, what else do you have me to learn here? Yeah. So how did, I'm guessing, and I know a little bit more probably than the listeners do, but so Redbird Ministries is kind of a manifestation of a lot of your life experiences. So can you tell us about that and what it is?
Yeah, so Redbird Ministries, we started it here in the Diocese of Lafayette because whenever we lost our children, there was no grief support in our church parish or diocese. Really in our community as a whole, we didn't have anything. And I felt abandoned by the church. What I later know now is that, we are supposed to step up. We are the mystical body of Christ. It's not just, when they talk about the 99 and the 1, we always think like our priest or our pastor has to be the one that does all the work. And it's not true.
It's not, because then you look around and there's hundreds of people beside you, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Great point. Thank you.
Yeah. So where I felt abandoned and I was mad, it was an invitation by God. He really told me, you go do it. And I was like,
wow,
I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Like, okay, Kelly, you recognize the need. Then guess what? It's so funny because I was just the other day, I was doing some writing and I was like, every time looking back that I said, somebody, this is really missing. This is really, it was always like something I started. Like, but I think what happens is we feel like this is missing and I want somebody else to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's so easy to be the one that's in the, that's outside.
Right.
It's Brene Brown. She's incredible, but she talks about the man in the arena.
Yes.
Like, we want to be the spectators telling the man in the arena what to do, and I was telling my team the other day, I said, I have so embraced that theory or whatever it is. I embrace that because I don't want anyone's opinion that don't want to get in the arena.
I know. It's like watching a horror movie and people get mad and they're like, don't run up the stairs. Like, dude, unless you're in this fight with me, don't tell me what to do. Yeah.
I'm running.
Yeah. So anyway, Redbird Ministries. Sorry about that segue.
So we are a Catholic grief support ministry, and we call ourselves pro-life, pro-family for two specific reasons. Because we, one of the things that those who are grieving do is they hold hostage their fertility, and they don't trust God with that again. So we try to embrace.
What does that mean, to hold hostage your fertility?
Well, because what happens when you lose, you have a fear of losing again. So they don't want to trust God with the size of their family. So they contracept and they sterilize. And a lot of the times, to be honest with you, they regret those decisions. But because of the fear, and this is just from experience for the families that we serve who have shared that information with us. I forgot where I was going with that. But
you said we hold hostage you said we're pro-life and pro-family for two reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So, and another, of course, being pro-life, to be Christian is to be pro-life. We just really embrace that, because when we learn how to invite God back into all the spaces of our heart, we have to trust and surrender it all to him. And it is scary sometimes, but it's what he asks of us, to surrender it to him. And
it's interesting because when you use that term, I just did a solo podcast episode on how little control we have over basically everything.
Yes.
But how we hold hostage a lot of our areas. We hold hostage, our finances, right? Oh, I better not tithe, or I better not give, because then I won't be able to pay my electric bill or whatever it is, right? And look, to be very clear, we are not judging any of this. We are just talking about it, shedding some light and some truth on it. And I think just holding hostage, like our relationship happiness.
Yeah.
Like we could feel like God doesn't want us to be with somebody, but we're like, oh, but if I don't, then I'm going to be alone. So I have to take matters into my own hands, God. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And everything I'm telling you is stuff that I suffered with myself. So I had to, to open those doors. And I still sometimes I feel like I'm doing a dance with God, where I trust, and then I'm triggered, and I'm suffering. And I even with trying to get pregnant, it doesn't happen for me.
Yeah.
And then some days I'm like, but what if it does? What if it does? Yeah. So I am not, like you said, I'm not judging, and I'm just sharing that most people who come to our help, they regret some of those decisions because it hurts their heart, because you realize one day is that God has a plan for you all along. And it takes cooperation with us. Yeah. It takes our cooperation with God, and trying to control certain situations is not what's always best for us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And our cooperation is not tit for tat. Our cooperation is, okay, you got this. I don't. What's next? Yeah. That's our cooperation.
Yeah. Right? And it takes a lot of I have to really be without any other options. Sometimes to give it up to God. So
right.
But at the heart of it, this is what we help families with, because these are the struggles that they suffer from. So they suffer from their marriage. Yeah. A lot of the times that is their fertility. You have one spouse that wants to do NFP, one spouse that doesn't. I'm not certified in NFP. So we just share our own story about our struggle, and so does all the other families.
So is it individual work? Is it group work? Is it instructional materials? What does it look like?
That's kind of all of that. So basically, when we started out with a couples grieving workshop. So where we have two speakers and we share stories, and then we group together losses. So one speaker, the group of loss, they share discussion questions. We do a break, another speaker, and we kind of end our day with mass. And then after we did the couples workshop, we started monthly support group meetings.
Okay.
And those are for either you can come as a couple or you could come as an individual. And it kind of morphed into something bigger than we had ever anticipated, because we felt that grief support is not really received by the world as a whole. No one really wants to talk about death and dying. Right. And so people just don't know what to do with it. And I think a lot of the times, people like me, you just left to figure things out on your own.
On your own. Yep.
And it's,
so thanks for bringing light to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that's why I suffered a lot longer than I should have.
Yeah.
But during this, just kind of like God just revealing things to us, we decided that we were going to try to duplicate our efforts. So I wrote this program for the support group, and we've been piloting it. It's on the Passion of Christ. So it's finding your story in Jesus' story, which I never thought that was ever possible. And I started during one Lent just really diving in to the Passion on all the accounts and really studying scripture word for word and trying to find my place in each of these moments, starting in the agony of the garden. And so going through. And when I was done, Jesus had revealed 10 things to me. So 10 sessions. And we are taking these and we are creating it for other areas of the country to bring it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That was going to be my question is, so, for the women listening, two things really. Who's your ideal person that can benefit from what you guys offer, and where are they? Like, is it just infant or young child loss? What are the parameters there for the people that you serve?
Yeah, so we serve any child of loss from miscarriage to adulthood. The oldest family that we served, she lost her 46-year-old son to cancer.
Oh, that's beautiful.
As long as the parents are alive, we serve the family.
Okay.
And it's more an accompaniment. We do have counselors that help us, but mainly our resources are an accompaniment. So it's
to like if they were to get traditional therapy or something like that, this would be an enhancement to that.
Well, basically what we say, from someone doing nothing to traditional therapy, we want to try to fill in that gap, because a lot of the times people do nothing.
Understood. Yep.
And it's hard for them. Another thing that we found is that because of the stigma and the judgment that's associated with grief, people are unwilling to do this or to take that step to do any type of grief support, whether it is to seek counseling or it is to go to a support group. So we are creating this online community, and right now we're developing it, and we're also going to be doing courses. So again, courses are kind of like the support group manual. It's made to bring people to, it's kind of, I would probably have to describe it as a cross between a Bible study and I guess like a prayer reflection. But it does address the 4 aspects of grief, which is the emotional, the psychological, the relational, and the spiritual.
Okay.
And we have had counselors put their eyes on it, and we've had spiritual directors put their eyes on it to make sure that it leads the person to where you want them to go.
Have you ever had anybody that's not of faith reach out to Redbird?
Yeah, we have. And a lot of the of no faith or very angry at God. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And different faiths.
You can serve them.
Yes.
Absolutely. Good.
And we don't just serve Catholics. That's just the theology that we stand on. We serve all denominations. We've had all denominations come to our support group. Yeah. And eventually that will be part of our online. We will have an ecumenical, which will be all faith-based type of support manual. But for now, we're starting to not to overwhelm ourselves. The first initiative we're doing is child loss. Okay. But it'll start to build to where we'll do like grandparents. For a grandparent who lost a grandchild. Yes.
Got it. Oh, that's beautiful. What an untapped market for sure. Yeah. That's wonderful. And I use the word market, but y'all know what I mean. I'm not heartless. So
it's a missing touch for evangelization, because grief is the invitation, but we are actually introducing them to the real person of Jesus Christ. So that's where, because we cannot heal people.
Mhm.
Only Jesus can.
That's
and
right.
that's kind of how,
Yeah.
how we lead them.
I love that. It's beautiful. Tell me quickly, Kelly, why Redbird? Why the name Redbird?
Yeah. So remember I was telling you my friend who her daughter died,
Yes.
her name was Isley. And my friend's first cousins have a little band, and they're called Sweet Cecilia.
Okay.
You can look them up on YouTube. And the song they wrote that mentions Isley is called Redbird Flies.
Okay.
And it talks about, I think of you when the redbird flies. So it's just a way to remember and honor and love those that we've lost.
Love it. I love that. Do you have anything do you have little redbird stuff around your house or?
Yes,
yeah.
I do. I do. Not in this room to show you, but
yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So what's the best way for parents who have lost a child, either infant, in utero, or all the way up to an adult child? What's the best way for them to access you and your services?
Yes, absolutely. So our website is www.redbird.love.
Okay.
And there is a ton of information on there that they can, dive in, look around. The online
you have a really beautiful video on there too. I love that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. The online community is not going to be released. We're still trying to build it. So it's going to take a little time to do that. So, but in the future, you can always register or subscribe to get the updates. Okay. And I also want to plug my book if I can.
Yeah.
So after my healing and really understanding what God did to me, I wrote a book on my journey, and it's called Hiding in the Upper Room.
Okay.
And I named it Hiding in the Upper Room because in John, when Jesus entered the upper room, when the disciples, after the passion, when the disciples were hiding in fear, he entered and he said peace, and he showed his wounds. And although it was, I've always associated that with doubting Thomas. I'm Jesus, here's my wounds. But in actuality, he offered his peace and he showed his wounds as an invitation for us to show ours. And so it was written really on that whole idea that we can't help others if we're not first vulnerable and show our wounds.
Say that, girl. That's right. Yeah. I that is 100% truth. I've said before, people don't connect with people who have done it. They connect with people who are doing it.
Yes.
Right. And if you ever claim to have done it, then that's not the person I want to follow.
Well, I would always tell everybody I am not interested in learning from the intellectual aspect of it. I want someone who, like you said, is doing it. The witness.
Yes.
The witness. Yeah. I need to see the heart.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the mind is beautiful, but the heart.
The heart is what connects. I mean, that's why, I don't know, what are some of those commercials that connect with your heart? Is it Allstate? They had a commercial where it was you would envision kids in the middle of the road and the people are driving. And do you remember that commercial?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh my goodness. It was just so if you've ever cried at an insurance commercial, that's what we're talking about.
That's what,
making the emotional connection, right? Yeah, not the intellectual one for sure.
Right. Yeah,
awesome, Kelly. We are coming to the close of the show today, and I'm just so grateful for you sharing your heart. I know that you have so much more to offer, and I would encourage everybody listening to check out redbird.love. I love that. We'll include the link in the show notes, and any social media links as well. We'll include. And before we close out, though, I ask every guest, Kelly, this one thing to tell us at the end to close us out. If there is one truth that you would have the women listening to remember and never forget after this conversation ends, what would that be?
I would tell everyone never to miss the opportunity for someone who is trying to help. Never. Because when you open your heart, God works with that. the biggest mistake that I did was to close my heart off to everyone. And that I paid a price for that. And it was my own, darkness.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't protect me like I thought it was going to do. It actually backfired, and it hurt me tremendously. So if you feel like God is speaking to you right now to go and find this information, like, embrace that.
Go do it.
Go do it. Yes.
Don't say no to the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Love it. What a lovely soul is Kelly Breaux. I'm just so delighted, literally delighted, y'all. I am getting to meet so many incredible women, Kelly included. Hey, listen, if there's somebody that you know that you're thinking, man, Dr. Sherri's got to have her on the show, introduce me, right? Send me a message, send me an email at drsherryspeaks@gmail.com. Just say, hey, I've got somebody that I'd love for you to interview for the podcast. I promise at the very least, I will have a conversation and see if it's a good fit for the show. So I thank you for thinking of me and keeping me in mind when you run across incredible people and their stories that need to be heard by women worldwide. Hey, listen, go reach out to Kelly, connect with her on Facebook. Definitely click the link in the show notes for Red Bird Ministries. Check out the work that she's doing in Louisiana, and I'm sure this is soon to spread like wildfire. And watch that introductory video she's got on the website. Your heart will be touched. It's very beautiful. Thank you again, Kelly, for agreeing to be on the show. And hey, a special shout out to my friend Derek Kretzer again for providing the music for season 2 of Thriving Thoughts podcast. And one more time, if you'd like to sign up for text messages straight from me, all you have to do is text the word Thrive to 540-369-2139. And until next week, friends, remember to speak truth over the lies so you can thrive in any and every circumstance.